In the Finnish presidential elections that were held on Sunday, January the 28th, 2018, in accordance with almost all the pre-election opinion surveys or polls, the incumbent president, Mr. Sauli Niinistö, was re-elected outright. He received 62.7% of the vote, thus avoiding the runoff, which would have been held had he received under 50% of the vote. The Green League's presidential candidate, Mr. Pekka Haavisto, placed second, just like in 2012, but far behind Niinistö with just 12.4% of the vote. The National Conservative Finns Party's presidential candidate, Mrs. Laura Huhtasaari, came third with 6.9% of the vote. Former Foreign Minister Mr. Paavo Väyrynen, who, just like the incumbent president Mr. Niinistö, campaigned as an independent presidential candidate, received 6.2%. Excuse me. Former Prime Minister Matti Vanhanen of the Centre Party got 4.1%. Mrs. Tuula Haatainen of the Social Democratic Party received 3.3%. Ms. Merja Kyllönen of the Left Alliance got 3.0%. And Mr. Niels Torvalds of the Swedish People's Party received 1.5%. The voter turnout, however, was notably low. Only 66.7% of the people eligible to vote, or just over 3 million, bothered to vote. Mr. Niinistö thus will join the late President Mauno Koivisto and two living former presidents, and one living former president, Mrs. Tarja Halonen, as a two-term president, elected to full 12 years. The other living former Finnish president, Mr. Martti Ahtisaari, settled for one term from 1994 to 2000. And since the two-term limitation and consecutive two-term limitation of the Finnish presidential terms was implemented in 1991 and became effective in 1994, when then President Mauno Koivisto refused to seek a third term, obviously it is impossible for the presidents to even approach the nearly 26 years when the late President Urho Kekkonen was the Finnish president. He did not have any term limits.